This section will begin looking at some of the causes of the late 19th century Industrial Revolution boom, the first of which was the new industry of steel. Steel is a stronger metal than iron and rusts less readily, perfect for the many new machines in the late 19th century. The ancient Romans knew how to make steel from iron ore, but the process was arduous and slow, and thus steel was just too expensive for mass production. In the middle of the 19th century, however, Henry Bessemer patented a new inexpensive way to mass-produce steel from molten pig iron, the famous Bessemer process. The key principle was to place the hot molten pig iron into an open hearth furnace and then blow air through it. The resulting oxidation removed the impurities from the iron, with the new molten steel able to be shaped as it cooled. Soon the process was improved, including blowing through certain chemicals. Now, for the first time, the cost of steel was cheap enough for wide use. The United States was fortunate because it had a tremendous amount of iron ore, coal, and limestone. To produce the steel, the Bessemer blast furnace needed not only a lot of iron ore, but enormous amounts of coal, which was then roasted into, quote, coke, a burnt coal capable of much more intense heat. To this they added limestone to make the combustion that produced steel. In many areas of the Appalachian Mountain in western Pennsylvania, among others, there were tremendous reserves of iron and coal. Accordingly, Pittsburgh became a major location of the steel industry, and thus Pittsburgh's NFL football team is known as the Pittsburgh Steelers. The man who popularized and marketed the mass production of steel in America in the late 19th century was not Bessemer, however, but Andrew Carnegie. Born in Scotland, Carnegie immigrated to America in 1848 at the age of 12. Far from wealthy, Carnegie took a menial job in a Pittsburgh textile factory that paid only $1.20 per week. Although he worked a 60-hour week, the young Carnegie became a Western Union messenger boy. Because he had to decode the messages from every major business in Pittsburgh, Carnegie gained an insider's view of their operations. Carnegie's big break came in 1852 when Tom Scott, superintendent of the Pennsylvania Railroad's Western Division, hired him as his secretary and personal telegrapher. When Scott became vice president of the Pennsylvania Railroad 7 years later, the 24-year-old Carnegie took over as head of the line's Western Division. A daring innovator, Carnegie, in his 6 years as division chief, used the complex cost analysis techniques developed by Scott to more than double the road's mileage and quadruple its traffic. He slashed commuter fares to keep ridership at capacity and developed various cost-cutting techniques. Having invested his earnings in the railroad, by 1868 Carnegie was earning more than $56,000 a year from his investments, which was a substantial fortune in that era. In the early 1870s, Carnegie decided to build his own steel mill. His connections with the railroad industry, the country's largest purchaser of steel, ensured his success. Starting with his first mill, he introduced the Bessemer technology. Adopting this new technology and combining it with the cost analysis approach learned from his railroad experience, Carnegie became the first steel maker to know the actual production cost of each ton of steel. Carnegie's philosophy was really kind of simple. He'd say, watch the cost and the profits will take care of themselves. Using his rigorous cost accounting and limiting wage increases to his workers, he lowered his production costs and prices below those of his competitors, so he sort of undercut his competitors. And when these tactics did not drive them out of business, he was not above asking for favors from his railroad president friends or giving, quote, commissions to railroad purchasing agents to win business. This was, of course, be illegal today. As output climbed, Carnegie discovered the benefits of vertical integration. That is, controlling all manufacturing from the beginning of the process, extracting the raw materials to selling the finished product. In Carnegie's case, this control involved mining and the smelting of the iron ore into the steel, and then the marketing and selling of the steel. Carnegie Steel, his company, was a pretty good example of sophisticated technology combined with innovative management. and like I said, brutally low wages to slash consumer prices and grow. By 1900, Carnegie Steel was one of the largest industrial operations in the world, employed just about 20,000 people. And his competitors were worried about him growing and decided they better buy him out or he'd take them over. In 1901, J.P. Morgan, who controlled the company known as Federal Steel, came to Charles Schwab, who was Carnegie Steel's president, to inquire if Carnegie wanted to sell, what Carnegie wanted to ask for his shares of Carnegie Steel. Charles Schwab, of course, is name of an investment house his family later started. Anyway, the next day Carnegie gave Schwab a penciled note asking for nearly a $500 million. When Schwab brought the note to Morgan, Morgan's response was simple: tell Carnegie I accept his price. So that meant that Carnegie sold his company for $500 million, and what Morgan then did was combine Federal Steel with Carnegie Steel and set up a new company known as the United States Steel Corporation, and it was the first business in American history capitalized at more than $1 billion. The corporation was made up of 168,000 people, and it really marked a new scale in the age of industrial enterprise. When I say Carnegie sold Carnegie Steel to Morgan for $500 million, and Morgan's new company was known as U.S. Steel and was capitalized at $1 billion, keep in mind that this is in $1,900. At that time, the average salary for a person in the United States was about $450. Carnegie was simply one of the wealthiest men in the history of the world at the time, and he became a major philanthropist. He would Saturdays and give a lot of his money back, and over his life he donated over $300 million. Among Carnegie's recipients was the Carnegie Endowment for Peace, a number of Carnegie libraries across the country, and the famous Carnegie Hall in New York City. Accordingly, in his life, Carnegie became one of the most famous people in the world. This added to the reputation of America as the land of opportunity. In America, the rigid social hierarchy of Europe didn't apply, and social and economic mobility was much easier. Carnegie appeared like the living embodiment of the famous Horatio Alger stories. Horatio Alger was a prolific writer who wrote cheap but well-selling stories of immigrants coming to America with nothing but getting rich. It wasn't great literature, but they were a lot of people read them, and this led to a new wave of immigration to America. They all wanted to be Andrew Carnegie. They all wanted to live the Horatio Alger story. This concludes the section on the steel industry and the Industrial Revolution.